The Red Sox just made a trade at the buzzer to hopefully continue to bolster their bullpen. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Red Sea Radio. My name is Corbin. The trade deadline has come and gone, and we'll talk about the Red Sox overall success or failure at this year's deadline in tomorrow's video. But what we're doing in this one specifically is talking about a trade that came across at the very last second for the Boston Red Sox, a trade to hopefully get some legitimate help in this bullpen. So we're going to take a look at the trade, who's coming in, who's going out, and how it impacts the 2024 Red Sox. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one. Let's get into it. Okay, so obviously the very first thing we need to talk about is who the Red Sox are actually getting. Right around 6 p.m. Eastern time, pretty much the exact moment the trade deadline ended, Jon Heyman announced that the Boston Red Sox had traded with the Los Angeles Angels for veteran reliever Luis Garcia. Now, Luis is a 37-year-old relief pitcher who's having a really solid season. He's currently at a 3.71 ERA with a 3.68 FIP, a 1.16 ERA plus, so about 16% better than the average pitcher in Major League Baseball, and a 1.168 WHIP. He's also not striking out a ton of guys, but he is getting some swing and miss at 8.2 per 9, and he's not walking a ton of people either at just 2.9 per 9 innings. And on the surface, these statistics they're all right? He's an above average bullpen arm, which is perfectly fine, but there is a little bit more that I want to talk about with Luis Garcia here. The first thing I want to point out is his baseball savant page, because it's really, really interesting, and at some points, definitely a bit intriguing. If you take a look at it, a lot of things are sitting around or above average. There are a couple of things that do stand out negatively. One is his average exit velocity, which means he's getting hit pretty hard out of the bullpen, and the other one is obviously his hard hit percentage. Again, he's getting hit pretty hard out of the bullpen, but if you take a look at some of the other things on this list here, he's got a pretty decently fast fastball, especially for a 37-year-old, averaging 96.3 miles an hour. His chase rate is really impressive, 79th percentile. He's getting a lot of swings on pitches outside of the zone. His whiff rate, okay. His strikeout rate, again, right around that league average, and that walk rate above league average as well. But he's getting a ton of ground balls, and I mean a ton, the 86th percentile in the entire sport, and his off-speed pitches are actually pretty valuable. His off-speed run value is at 1, which is good for the 73rd percentile in Major League Baseball. There's some give and take here with Luis Garcia on his baseball savant page, but there's also some really interesting stuff as well. Some stuff that I believe may actually make him an effective reliever with the Boston Red Sox, because what you're getting is a guy who's going to throw a ton of strikes, who's going to get a ton of chases on the pitches he doesn't throw for strikes, and he's going to get a lot of hard contact on the ground. Obviously, Red Sox infield defense hasn't exactly been fantastic for the entire year, but it has been better as of late, and I'm wondering if that is something that the Red Sox are going to rely on as they sort of integrate Luis Garcia into this bullpen. Now, there are a couple other things I wanted to point out as well. Again, like we talked about when we talked about Sims, who was acquired earlier today by the Boston Red Sox, it really felt like the Red Sox targeted a specific area of need. With Sims, he was a big 8th inning guy, and it's the same sort of situation with Luis Garcia as well. Of his total games, he's appeared in a majority of them in the 8th inning, and he's been really solid in the 8th inning for the Angels this year. It's a 2.41 ERA in 18 and a third innings, and on top of that, opponent OPS plus is at 90%, 10% below league average production. That is a 642 OPS on the season. Again, the Red Sox realize that, hey, right now our biggest weakness, our standout weakness in terms of bullpen usage is the fact that we have been having a whole lot of issues being able to lock down that 8th inning. Well, now you've added in two really decent high leverage options for this Red Sox team, while also being able to get back Chris Martin, Justin Slayton, and Liam Hendriks, who could all fill that same role as well. It's sort of bolstering an area that needed to be bolstered while also securing an area for the future of this team over the next couple of months. On top of that, and I know there's a lot of on top of that, so we've talked about in this video already, but I just want to make sure you guys get a full picture of who Luis Garcia may possibly be. He's had a really interesting up and down type season when it comes to month-to-month performance. He started off the year with a 6 ERA in 12 innings between March and April. In May, he really did seriously well, with a 2.70 ERA in 13 innings. Last month in June, not exactly fantastic with a 4.66 ERA, and in July so far, he's having the best month of his season up to this point at a 1.04 ERA in 8 2/3 innings. I'm really interested to see what Luis Garcia looks like in a Red Sox uniform. Can they find a way to make him a bit more, instead of this roller coaster production, more steady production somewhere in the middle, right? You take his two worst months, we'll say around 5.5 is probably the median there, and then you take his two best months, and you're probably looking at 1.5 somewhere in the middle right there. And if you could find a middle ground, well, hey, that's a bit of a 3-ish reliever in the back end of your bullpen, and that's a really, really solid arm to have out there. Now, obviously, in my opinion, one of the bigger concerns here is his age. He is 37 years old, and throwing that hard at 37 could lead to some complications later down the road. Taking a quick look at his pitch mix here, there's a lot to take away from this as well. He throws a whole bunch of different pitches. It's a sinker, a splitter, a slider, a sweeper, a four-seamer, and a cutter that really doesn't get used all that much. Mostly what he throws is a sinker and a splitter, and they've been pretty solid for him this year. It's a 207 batting average against his sinker, and with a 345 slug, and a 237 batting average against with a 237 slug on that split finger. Those sound like music to my ears. They probably sound like even better music to Andrew Bailey's ears as well, as this is someone who plays mostly, if not fully, on his off-speed or non-straight fastball type stuff, and that kind of fits in perfectly with this Red Sox mold. So if you're taking a look at why the Red Sox may have wanted to get Luis Garcia, I actually think the answer is pretty obvious here. In my opinion, this could end up being the highest impact trade the Boston Red Sox make at this year's deadline for a couple of simple reasons. Luis Garcia is sort of exactly what the Red Sox needed in this bullpen, at least to bridge the gap until Martin and Slayton get back, and once those guys do get back, you're looking at a really solid bullpen. And adding in Lucas Sims and Luis Garcia, and on top of Kenley, Chris Martin, Justin Slayton, Liam Hendricks, Zach Kelly, right? All these type of names out there, you're going to be looking pretty good once this team can get fully healthy. Obviously, there are some risks involved with this trade, but again, if you're looking at it on the surface in terms of who Luis Garcia is and why the Red Sox may have targeted him, I think the answer is pretty clear, and I actually do like this trade target a whole lot. But obviously, it takes two to tango here, and the Red Sox did give some stuff up to get him, so let's talk about that as well. But before we do, make sure you guys have hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you're new here, we talk Red Sox content basically every single day. Also, make sure you guys have hit the like button on this video as well. Helps these videos out a ton, and it would mean a lot to me. Thank you all very much for taking a second and doing so. Let's break down the second half of this deal. To get Luis Garcia onto the Boston Red Sox, they had to give up quite a bit, at least in terms of actual bodies themselves, because 4 Red Sox minor league players, all of them from the Worcester Red Sox, are going back to the Los Angeles Angels. That is a ton of body capital to send back to a team for a reliever on a short-term rental. The biggest name of those 4 is absolutely Matthew Lugo, who was, I guess, not really currently anymore, but was the 17th overall prospect for the Boston Red Sox, who had been having a really incredible resurgence type year. To start off the season, he began in Double-A, where he had a .315 average, a .405 on base percentage, and a .667 slug, good for a 195 WRC plus, about 95% better than the average hitter in that league. He was then promoted, obviously, up to Worcester, where he was eventually traded, but he struggled a bit up there. However, he was figuring himself out a bit recently. He finished with a .250 average, a .340 on base percentage, and a .452 slug, good for a 104 WRC plus, about 4% better than the average AAA hitter. In my opinion, I love Matthew Lugo. I thought he was going to be a really underrated bat to watch progress through this Red Sox system. I thought maybe this was somebody that they would try and rely on a little bit towards the end of the season because of what he's been able to do to make himself a better player at the minor league level. I thought this would kind of be someone to keep an eye on as sort of that Swiss Army knife prospect, or slightly more versatile prospect as we get closer towards the end of the season here. But at some point, again, we talk about this all the time. This is a seller's market, right? The Red Sox had to get uncomfortable if they wanted to make even marginal improvements for this Red Sox team. And I think that's exactly what we saw at this year's deadline. This trade being absolutely no different. They didn't get too uncomfortable or uncomfortable to the point I think a lot of fans wanted to see. But Matthew Lugo, parting with him is absolutely an uncomfortable move for the Boston Red Sox, especially because Luis Garcia is again a 2-month rental who will be a free agent at the age of 38 coming out of this season. The other 3 names included on this list is pitcher Ryan Zeferhan, Jefferson Vargas, who honestly I don't even recognize in the AAA Worcester roster. I don't know if he's on that AAA team, and Nico Cavadas. Man, Nico Cavadas being on there kind of hurts. It's not really someone big time that the Red Sox gave up. This was probably where Nico Cavadas's value on the open market was, but I was really hoping to see him at some point at the big leagues as well, just because I think it'd be a fun bat to watch with all that power included. Taking a look at this prospect haul overall, it's definitely a lot to give up in terms of overall amount of people for one person, but it's also not really a massive loss for this Red Sox team. Matthew Lugo, like I said, was absolutely the highlight of this deal. The Red Sox needed to add, they needed to do something, and at some point that requires them having to give someone up. Matthew Lugo, Nico Cavadas, Ryan Zeferhan, and Vargas ended up just finding themselves in the fray somewhere, which is unfortunate for them. Hopefully this works out for the Boston Red Sox. Overall, looking at this deal in total, I don't love it. I don't hate it. I think it ends up being a solid move for the Sox. They don't give up anyone who is going to be an immediate impact on this team. They also, one thing I did want to point out is this does free up some roster spots in AAA for maybe some bigger name prospects down in AA waiting their turn to get their shot at the next level. I'm looking at you, Marcelo, Teal, Anthony, anyone else down there who's doing really well. It's definitely prospect promotion season, so keep an eye on that as well. But back to this trade in general, I think it's a solid move for this Red Sox team. My biggest problem with this trade is not the trade itself, it's with the overall idea the Red Sox had at this year's deadline, which was essentially, yeah, we're going to get everything we wanted, but we're going to do the bare minimum to get it, right? You got a starter. It's not a great starter, but it's a starter. You got a bat. It's not a great bat, but it's a bat. You got relievers. It's not the best relievers, but they're relievers, right? You did your job. You just didn't really do your job. I don't know how to explain it other than that. And I think this Luis Garcia trade is another example of that. Although what I will say, again, like I said when we were talking about him, I do think Luis Garcia has the potential to be one of the highest impact moves the Red Sox make at this year's deadline. He's looking on the surface. He kind of fits perfectly with what the Red Sox need. So I'm excited to see what he looks like in a Red Sox uniform after the deadline. And obviously, as the Red Sox hopefully push towards a playoff spot, and that's it, folks. That is every single trade the Red Sox have made at this year's deadline. It's officially done. It's officially over. So let me know in the comment section down below, what do you think about this last one? Before we head out and stop talking about trades and trade possibilities, what do you think about this last one? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Do you think it's too big? Do you think it's too small? What are your thoughts on the Red Sox going after Luis Garcia in the comment section down below? As always, if you made it to the end of this video, do me a favor. Make sure you guys have hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you're new here, we talk Red Sox content almost every single day. Also, make sure you guys have hit the like button on this video as well. Really helps these videos out a ton. It's the best way you can let me know you're enjoying the content we are putting out. Don't forget, we are available in podcast form. If you want to listen instead of watch, you can always head over to your favorite podcasting app and look up Red Seat Radio. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one, and I will see you probably tomorrow with a recap of the entire deadline and in the red seats.